Wagwan viewers and subs, welcome back to class. In this episode of Mario's paint class, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about your paint gun, how to become a master painter. Now, if you don't know anything about your gun, then that's a problem if you're trying to be a painter, because in order to be successful in the body shop, painting cars, you're gonna have to know your weapon of choice. Even if you're being a body man, you need to know what dent puller you need, what blocks you need to use, and what tools hammers and such, right? Now let's dive into this so you can understand. Now this is how most paint guns are set up, or this is how they're built, right? You have the cup here. If you're using the aluminum cup, it'll have a lid on the top where you can close it so that your paint don't come out. In this case, we're using PPS cups, right? So we don't need that metal cup because these are disposable, right? So now when you go down, you look right here is the cap. This is the cap of the gun. And under the cap of the gun, you will find your tip. So you need to know if you need a 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and so on, right? Then here we have our pattern control knob. So this here controls the pattern. And this here is your fluid control. And this is basically the body of the gun. Down here you have your air control knob, and then this is your air inlet. So you can have a pressure gauge on there that will tell you what amount of PSI you're using. And then right here, this is your trigger. This releases the paint from inside the gun and the paint cup. All right, now let's break them down one by one. So obviously the cup holds your material. So this is where you pour your paint, your sealer, and so on, right? This here is a adapter. This is a S2C adapter that works. This is the Master Pro 44 series, and the S2C works really well. You can find those on Amazon. And then here, so when your pattern, right, this basically controls how wide, how narrow your pattern is. So let's make a quick demonstration. All right, so I'm just gonna turn in my pattern control knob. I'm gonna turn it all the way in, right? Now let's show you what happens when you do that. Now you notice the difference? I can control my pattern to how wide, how narrow, because you know sometimes you have some small grooves on especially a bumper that you're trying to get into, so you have to go ahead and adjust with your pattern control to reach those places you want to go. Is here you get it wide and open if you're in a wide open space, and you just keep it moving, right? This here is your fluid knob control. Now what that means that you're gonna control how much fluid you get. So sometimes you might be painting and then you're wondering, why am I not getting good coverage? Like, why is the paint coming out so thin? Or it's like you're begging for it to come out, right? That's because you probably have your adjust knob all the way out, right? If it's all the way out, you're barely gonna get any fluid at all. Now what I do to set up all my guns is I catch the knob on here and I hold down the trigger, and then I keep on turning until I feel a push on this finger, and then I'll know if my fluid is good or not, right? So let's move on to the next one. This here is your pressure inlet. Now if this is closed, you're not gonna get any pressure at all. So you have to make sure that when you're spraying, this is wide open. Now I know some guns might only have this here as a pressure guide, so you can always adjust it to where you need your pressure to be. And this here is a pressure gauge, so this will tell you what amount of pressure you're using in your gun. And then you know you have your cap with the tip inside, as I just recently explained. But let's dive deeper into this area, because this area specifically is where a lot of the action happens that will cause you trouble. Now I have this diagram here, and I'm going to break this down into simple terms where you guys can understand. Now this diagram here represents an ear cap. These are your horns here. When you look at the paint gun, these things right here, they're called horns, right? And notice the horns, they have a hole inside of them, and then in the center you have two holes, and then this one is for the needle where your fluid comes out, right? As you can see, some guns might have more, some guy have less. This gun has 4 holes in total in the middle, and then you have 4 holes on total on the horns. So there's 2 holes on this cap, right? But the rule remained the same. This is the horns and this is the center. So this hole here, or these holes here, are called auxiliary orifices. Now the main purpose, right, of the auxiliary orifices, right, they promote atomization. They're going to promote that atomization. If you have more than one of these holes, like what this gun carries, it's better. Newer guns always have more holes tend to older guns because they break down the paint a lot better. This here in the middle is the center orifice. The center orifice creates a vacuum discharge for your paint. The center orifice is related to the trigger and the needle. Right? If you notice here, this is exactly where your needle is. So once you squeeze the trigger, it opens up and the paint will flow out of it, right? Just like that. You'll notice that the paint flows out. So once the air is in the gun, it creates a vacuum. It's like a push and pull when you release and when you pull and release the trigger. So that is what the center orifice main purpose is. Now as for the other one, which is the side orifice, this is located on the horn. As I mentioned, some guns have more holes. In this case, mine have 2 on each side, and on this diagram there is only 1, but the same rule applies. The side orifice is the one that controls the pattern by means of pressure. So depending on how low or how high your pressure is, this is going to affect the pattern of your gun. Now that I explain what these holes represent, these are very important. When you're choosing a gun, you need to know what these are too, right? Because if, now let's say one of these holes are blocked, do you think that we're gonna be getting good atomization or good spray pattern? No, we're not gonna get good pressure or good atomization. I can make that test right now. So I'm just gonna put some tape on the horn here. I'm gonna block that off completely. And then I'm going to block off the orifices in the middle. Right, so I got them blocked off. Now what kind of pressure or pattern am I gonna be getting? Now you guys notice what happened, right? Even though I did not adjust the pattern, this is the pattern I got because the holes were blocked off, right? And then once I removed the tape, I start to get back an even longer pattern, right? Because my pattern here is set to wide open, which means it should give me a nice wide pattern like this. Now let's dive into proper and improper atomization. Now I want you guys to pay attention to something. The gauge here does not work at all. It doesn't work. Note, I'm pressing the trigger, nothing's happening. This gauge does not work, right? So I know some of you guys might ask, hey, what PSI are you spraying at? I want to teach you this trick so that you'll never have to ask again, and you'll be able to control that without a pressure gauge. So first I'm going to start off at low pressure. I'm at low pressure right now, right? All right, now I did a bunch of sprays, right? This was the first one I did at low pressure. Notice what happens, right, guys? It's very grainy, right? It's super grainy That means I'm not getting proper atomization. The droplets around this area and in between need to be a lot finer. So I added more pressure. You can see that the droplets are a little bit smaller, but it's still not there yet. This one is the same thing. A little bit finer, but not quite there yet. Over here, it got finer, and this is okay, but we need this still to adjust a little bit better. Over here is perfect. It's perfect right here. This is how we would want the edge of our droplets to be, not like this. And the other thing is, once you have low pressure, you're gonna get more overspray, believe it or not. You will get the overspray with the high pressure, but you also get it with the low pressure because the droplets are so big and they're just gonna be scattering all over the place. This is a common question, right? How do I prevent streaks in my paint job? Well, one of the main problems, the main cause that you might have streaks in your paint job is because your gun is not cleaned properly. There is one of these holes are clogged and you can't get proper pattern control or proper atomization because the gun is clogged. So when you do your overlaps, right, it's not overlapping properly. There is gaps in between it. Now let's use this as an example, right? You're painting and you want your paint to cover this entire area, but this is what's happening because you don't have a clean gun. So you're getting paint, right? But then it's only that much you're getting, and then you're all the way over here now getting paint. So what happens in the middle here? There is something wrong. Now I'm gonna go ahead and spray a car with the same gun using no pressure gauge at all and show you guys how it's gonna come out.
The distance and speed also plays a big role in your atomization and your pattern. You need to be about 5 to 6 inches away from the panel for the best result. You don't need to be any closer than that. In terms of speed, I can't quite explain that, but make sure you keep it moving from side to side, up and down. Don't just stop in one area. Now think about this, guys. Put some water in a container and blow some air on it. The closer you get, the more ripples it's going to create in to the water, right? That would be the same thing if you're doing that with your paint or clear, and that's not going to be good at all. Now, when blending paint, the best pattern to use is the crisscross, go up and down like I'm doing here, because that's gonna hide that blend area on the edge of your base coat wherever you stop, right? And I'm doing medium wet coats, and bear in mind, guys, I still do not know what pressure I'm using, but based off the spray out on the wall, and then I can listen to it. Most painters that has a lot of experience can tell you if the pressure is good or not just by listening to it. Now I'll be using the Sagola for Clearcoat. All I have is the adjust knob for the air inlet to determine my pressure. I do not have an exact number of what pressure I'm using. What I'm doing, I'm paying attention to the droplets and see how it lays out, and also listening to the pressure to determine if I need more pressure or less pressure. I'm spraying wide open fan and at full fluid. Now, on my first coat of clear coat, what I like to do is I like to stay away from the edge of the panel, like right here at the door. I don't take the clear coat all the way out there. As I was explaining in one of the previous videos with Paint Society, that swimming pool effect, given the fact that this car is older and the paint or clear on this car is already dying. So regardless of what I do, to be honest, these panels here is gonna look a lot better than the rear body of this car or even the hood.